On this Saturday night, Israel intensifies its fight in Gaza. The entire extended family of dozens killed.
The Gaza Strip remains the most dangerous place in the world to be a child.
What's changed since the new diluted UN Security Council resolution? The Prime Minister in the hot seat.
People are being very clear that they don't like you in these polls.
Why Justin Trudeau says he's not going anywhere. And what documents obtained by Global News show most Canadians want the Liberals to do with their money. Plus, Mickey Mouse goes public. When Disney's bread and butter will no longer be exclusive to the brand.
Global National with Farah Nasser.
Good evening to you. Thanks for joining us. Aid agencies in Gaza have called the UN Security Council's most recent resolution nearly meaningless. It called for allowing more aid in, but didn't call for a ceasefire. And a day later, Israel has ratcheted up its ground and air operation in the besieged enclave. The deadliest in northern Gaza, where more than 90 Palestinians are said to have died after 2 homes were flattened. The Palestinian Health Ministry says more than 200 people have been killed and at least 360 injured in 24 hours. Israel has vowed not to back down, releasing this video of what it claims to be its close combat operations in the north, while its chief toured parts of the south, calling Israel's offensive impressive, but adding that his forces still have a lot of work to do. The increase in attacks raises concerns as well for the more than 100 people still being held by Hamas against their will. Reggie Cecchini has the latest from the region in tonight's top story.
Little remains intact of this building in central Gaza. It collapsed late Friday night following an Israeli airstrike. Children's toys and some food are all that can be recognized. Was there resistance in the house, asks a relative of one of the dead. The Israeli military destroyed it and turned it into a pile of rubble, he says. Gaza's Civil Defense Department believes 76 members of an extended family died in the attack, along with a veteran UN employee, one of at least 136 to die since this conflict began. The UN Secretary General says, "We've never seen this in UN history." The wounded are helped by the Palestinian Red Cross from makeshift tents. Israel has vowed to not let up until Hamas has been destroyed. But its unrelenting assault is creating a humanitarian crisis. The United Nations says 4 out of the 5 hungriest people anywhere live in Gaza.
The Gaza Strip remains the most dangerous place in the world to be a child.
UNICEF says those under age 5 are at risk of malnutrition and preventable death. It remains unclear if Israel will abide by a new UN Security Council resolution, calling for an increase in aid along with steps towards a pause in fighting, with the White House still not going as far as many other countries. Israel's Prime Minister thanked the U.S. for its support in a call with President Joe Biden on Saturday, but reiterated it will not stop until it achieves its goals. Only hours earlier, Hamas claimed Israel's offensive may have resulted in the deaths of more hostages, a claim that hasn't been confirmed. Meanwhile, in the West Bank, emptiness.
Bethlehem nowadays is isolated as the other Palestinian cities.
Bethlehem has chosen to cancel its Christmas festivities, saying the joy of the season has been diminished amid immense suffering. Reggie Cecchini, Global News, Washington.
Ukraine says it shot down 3 Russian warplanes, among the most advanced fighter jets in Moscow's fleet. A military spokesperson calls the takedown of the Su-34 aircraft a rare success for Ukraine's Air Force, something that's become less frequent as the war rages on to its 2nd year. And as Mackenzie Gray reports, more emergency aid from the U.S. is far from certain.
Amid a months-long stalemate, an early Christmas present for the Ukrainian military. 3 Russian Su-34 jets shot down, according to the Ukrainian president. May every Russian pilot know for sure that there will be an answer to every Russian murderer, said Volodymyr Zelenskyy. None will remain unpunished. But further Russian punishment is largely reliant on American aid, which is soon to run out.
We have one more security assistance package available to us before the end of this year, before we run out of replenishment authority to replenish the stocks and the inventories.
The Biden administration hoping to give $60 billion worth of supplies to Kyiv, but Republicans have been holding up that aid, tying new Ukraine money to fresh cash for border security. Even with that strategy, some senior Republicans still support the fight against Russia.
It's a dangerous world, one that doesn't reward weakness. America needs to show that we haven't forgotten how to lead.
But that message isn't landing with the base. A new poll showing 62% of Republicans think the U.S. is spending too much to help Ukraine, up from 50% in June. A similar sentiment showing in the Canadian Conservative caucus. Pierre Poilievre and the rest of the Tories voting multiple times against the updated Canada-Ukraine free trade deal.
Mr. Poilievre.
And against additional aid for Ukraine earlier this month. Decisions leading the Prime Minister to label Poilievre's party as MAGA conservatives.
Ukraine is on the front line of defending not just their own territory, but their international rules-based order. And that's why we are so unequivocal on Ukraine.
Despite continued Canadian and European support, a top Ukrainian general told Reuters they've already had to scale back some military operations, leaving a deal with Washington, who's supplied over $100 billion worth of aid, a key lifeline for Zelenskyy.
I'm confident that the United States will not let us down, and what we have agreed in the United States will be fulfilled.
A commitment that will be put to the test in the new year. Mackenzie Gray, Global News, Ottawa.
The Czech Republic came to a standstill at noon today as people across the country observed a minute of silence for the victims of Thursday's mass shooting. Bells rang out as people gathered outside of Prague's Charles University as part of a national day of mourning. On Thursday, a 24-year-old student opened fire in the school. The gunman killed 14 people and wounded at least 25 others before shooting himself. There is some hope of progress in one of several labor disputes rattling Quebec's public service. A union representing nearly 100,000 teachers says it's approved a proposed settlement with the province. But others who have been on an unlimited strike for weeks now show no signs of progress as workers struggle to afford food and gifts this holiday season. Dan Spector reports.
These Montreal teachers have come to this room because they're having trouble providing for their families this holiday season.
People are struggling to put food on the table.
The 65,000 members of the FAE union have been on an unlimited strike since November 23rd. That means no paychecks and being forced to rely on the generosity of others to afford the basics.
We want to give gifts to our children. We want to have a good time, for Christmas. Yeah.
The union put out a call for donations. Businesses and community members responded strongly. Food, gift cards, hygiene products, clothes, toys. It's a good thing so many people did donate because hundreds of desperate teachers showed up needing help. Organizers calling the scene both heartwarming and heartbreaking.
We think it's good, and also it's not good. It's bad because it's said that so much people need stuff.
100,000 teachers affiliated with the FSE, CSQ, and QPAT unions are feeling more reason for optimism. They reached a partial agreement with the government on key points, including class composition, workload reduction, and remuneration. Union leaders will present the proposed deal to members after the holidays.
It's nice just going into Christmas vacation here knowing that there's something on the table and the wheels are moving.
I'm a little worried, but I'm hopeful.
Kathy Korakakis points out that the new agreement in principle does not include the key issue of salary, which is being discussed at a separate bargaining table where 400,000 public workers are represented.
It's just so stressful because you don't know what it's going to be like come January 8th. Is there going to be school? Is there not going to be school?
That agreement in principle has put more pressure on the FAE union, which is negotiating separately from the Common Front. But teachers at the food drive are skeptical.
We don't want to have false hope.
Though they're happy they were able to rely on the community for help, they hope they won't need to much longer. Negotiations are ongoing, and there is still hope a deal can be reached before Christmas. Dan Spector, Global News, Montreal.
A 7th Canadian has died in connection to the Cantaloupe salmonella outbreak that has sent dozens to hospital. 164 cases have been confirmed across 8 provinces since the outbreak began in mid-October. Quebec has been the hardest hit with 111 cases. 61 people have been hospitalized after eating Malachita and Rudy brand cantaloupes. Canada's finance minister will not present the 2024 budget until early spring, but in the meantime, her government is busy seeking advice from Canadians on what that budget should look like. Global News has obtained a series of internal government polls which shows a majority of Canadians are looking for a balanced budget despite wanting to see an increase in spending on housing programs. David Akin has the details.
When she delivered her fall economic statement in November, Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland made a point of holding the line on any new government spending programs. And that may have been a nod to some internal government polling she had at the time that showed that a majority of Canadians were looking for some fiscal restraint. Global News has now obtained those internal government polls through access to information laws, and they show that 60% of those surveyed by the Privy Council Office, or PCO, believe it is time for Ottawa to balance the budget. And yet that very same internal polling provided some contradictory advice. 42.5% agreed with the statement the government should increase spending on housing, even if that means rising deficits. And while there is a desire for balanced budgets, just 25% agreed with this statement the federal government should reduce spending on programs and services. These data are from weekly polls commissioned by the PCO. 1,000 Canadians are surveyed every week by live agent telephone calls to landlines and cell phones, and the results are used to guide Cabinet's policymaking. The PCO polls did ask respondents to rank Ottawa's spending priorities. Increasing the housing supply was the most popular priority, picked by nearly 70% of respondents, but there was also strong support for helping low-income Canadians with a disability. Boosting defense spending, well, that was the least popular, with support of just 27%. So, some tough choices for Freeland and the government in 2024. Voters say they want fiscal restraint, and voters say they want more spending on housing and pharmacare and so on. In any event, the government wants more input, and so it has created a website, letstalkbudget24.ca. And you can go online and you can tell the government what your budget priorities are. David Akin, Global News, Ottawa.
The resilient Canadians who lost it all to some of the year's worst wildfires coming up. Their changed perspectives and how some families will finally be able to go home for the holidays. This year has been long and difficult for some Nova Scotia residents. Dozens of families lost their homes during this year's record wildfires. Heidi Petrachuk reports on the rebuilding process and what's ahead this holiday season.
Go. When wildfire ripped through suburban Halifax at the end of May, thousands had to flee. And 151 homes were destroyed.
We had to strip all the melted siding that was here. And
for Peter Dominy, it was one disaster after another. The wildfire severely damaged his home and vehicles. Then, almost 2 months later, record rainfall and flooding caused widespread devastation in the province and killed 4 people. Dominy considers himself lucky, but the flood did wash his driveway out and the water filled his basement.
Basically, you know, the locust hasn't arrived yet. I'm waiting for that to happen.
Dominy's home and his spirit have taken a beating, both now under repair.
That's the challenging part, is to watch so many things you own disappear, you know, sheds, cars, you know, and to try to live a normal life in between. So frankly, they haven't really had much of a life.
Wildfires in Nova Scotia burned more than 25,000 hectares this year and destroyed more than 200 homes in total, the province's most devastating fire season on record.
For those who need to repair or rebuild, it's been a long year, and some are further along than others, but everyone is looking forward now to the future.
Everybody has been working really quickly around the clock.
The city councillor for neighborhoods in the Halifax area hit hardest by the fires says some families could be in their new homes for the holidays.
That's awesome, you know, to be able to do that. But at the same time, we know that there are other families that just haven't been able to build.
Ecstatic. I can't.
Brandon McLeod won't be moving home until early next summer, a new foundation where his old house was freshly poured. But after losing everything to the wildfire, he sees the light at the end of the tunnel.
We know we're going to be coming home soon. That's what's keeping us going.
Someday we'll look back and, you know, I guess maybe talk about this in a different way, you know, and look at the good that came out of it, not the bad, right?
That good, says Domini, found in the neighbors that came together in the toughest of times to rebuild community from loss. Heidi Petracek, Hammonds Plains, Nova Scotia.
Ahead, his popularity is plummeting, but Prime Minister Justin Trudeau still feels he's the right person for the job. Our year-end one-on-one with the Prime Minister next. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is ending 2023 with some slumping polling numbers. An exclusive Ipsos poll for Global News done earlier this month shows some 69% of Canadians think Trudeau should resign in 2024, both as PM and Liberal leader. Mercedes Stephenson asks the Prime Minister why he's staying put as part of her year-end interview.
Your polls would indicate that you're not heading for a better year. 7 out of 10 Canadians want you to step down. There was a recent poll saying that Chrystia Freeland and Mark Carney were both more popular choices than you to lead the Liberal Party. Why do you think Canadians are so frustrated with you?
Well, I think, first of all, it's a really frustrating time. Full stop. There's so much going on around the world. There's so much impacting us here at home. There's so many challenges people are facing in their daily lives, from groceries to rent, that yeah, there's a lot of frustration, but we have been working incredibly hard to deliver for Canadians in really concrete ways. And to my mind, this is exactly not the time to be slowing down or to stop fighting for people. We have been focused on delivering for Canadians for 8 years now, and the context we're in right now, where progress has become so fragile because of global and large macro events, is the time to be doubling down and rolling up our sleeves, and that's what I'm here for.
And I understand wanting to advance that agenda, and that it's hard to let go of being in power once you're in. But historically, Canadian prime ministers don't get elected 4 times in a row, and people are being very clear that they don't like you in these polls.
Listen, people are frustrated right now, but on a personal level, I made a commitment in 2015 to a whole bunch of young people who came out to vote for the very, very first time that we were going to be doing the right kinds of things to secure the promise of this country in a way that people were worried about. And years later, even with everything we've done on the environment, on inclusion, on gender equality, on growing the economy, on reconciliation, those young people, 8 years later, are having trouble paying their rent, worried about their future in ways that are just as tangible, if not more, because of the global context we're in. And I didn't make a promise that I was going to make things better for them and then walk away after 4 years or even after 8 years. I said I'd be there to fight for them every single day.
Even if
That's
they
what
don't
I'm doing
want you
now.
there.
Listen, there'll be an election eventually in which people will get to make that choice.
You can watch Mercedes' full interview with the Prime Minister on a special edition of the West Block tomorrow morning, and again on Christmas Day, right here on Global. Next, Mickey Mouse, Disney, and the public domain, the 95-year-old copyrighted character that will soon belong to everyone. Mickey Mouse is about to belong to you and me and everyone, really. That's because the copyright on the famous Disney character is set to run out on January 1st. But as Mike Drolet reports, this fairy tale ending is quite complex.
This is Mickey Mouse before he became Mickey Mouse. The short film Steamboat Willie was our first introduction to Mickey in 1928, and that date is notable because under U.S. copyright laws, the movie is set to join the public domain, meaning anyone will be able to use the iconic character within reason.
But it better look like the 1928 version of Mickey Mouse, because Disney will pronounce itself if it looks anything like the later iterations.
Disney knew this day would come. The movie was put on YouTube 14 years ago. But they've since said they'll work to safeguard Mickey from consumer confusion. In the simplest of terms, the black and white rat-like, non-speaking boat captain is fair game. And only that. Anything that looks like modern Mickey is merely a lawsuit with big ears.
You could do variations of the Steamboat Mickey Mouse character, but what they've done is they've also locked Mickey Mouse in as a trademark. So that is now used for commercial branding purposes.
That's legalese for it's complicated. Basically, it can't look like it came from Disney. Consider the James Bond novel Dr. No. The book is free from copyright, the movie isn't. So the villain Blofeld would have to be presented without his white cat, which was only in the movie. And then there's Winnie the Pooh, who became public property in 2022 and was instantly given a makeover. The premise of the horror film? Poor, sweet, innocent Winnie and his pals have gone feral.
I won't be letting my kids watch it right now, though. They're still, I think they'll have nightmares over it. They could stick to reading the original versions of Winnie the Pooh.
Or they could watch this Sherlock Holmes, or that Sherlock Holmes. Any and all Sherlocks are public domain, and that's not a bad thing.
Shakespeare is in the public domain. It's been in the public domain for hundreds and hundreds of years, and we have been able to create so many new works from that knowledge. So what does Disney have to be afraid of?
Well, Winnie the Pooh certainly comes to mind.
Of course.
Mike Drolet, Global News, Toronto.
And the next decade is going to be pretty interesting in the copyright world. First iterations of Popeye and Superman are also set to become available for public use. That's Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Farah Nasser, and tonight's Your Canada is the Busch Art Gardens holiday display in Brentwood Bay, British Columbia. Mito Garcha will be with you tomorrow. Until the new year, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Good night.